So this right here is one of those movies where I hope Hollywood shot callers are paying attention. It's a prequel that doesn't suffer from prequelitis, a spin-off that doesn't just cling to the relevance of its brand name, and a story that feels worth telling and can stand on its own. This right here is the good stuff. I'll admit I had a lot of questions about A Quiet Place Day 1 when the first trailer dropped. And not just because I was incredibly late to the party with the first two installments. Was this franchise strong enough to start warranting spin-offs? Could it stand on its own without John Krasinski directing or the Abbott family in the plot? Could it overcome a somewhat troubled production? Could the story remain character-focused while taking an obvious jump in scale? And could the Death Angels still be intimidating after learning their weakness and seeing at least half a dozen get killed in parts 1 and 2? And somehow the answer to all of those questions wound up being yes. Day 1 not only matches the franchise's quality, but manages to carve out its own niche. But we have to start off with a bit of a spoiler because it's something the trailers never addressed, but it's a big part of the plot. So here's your warning. The movie centers around Lupita Nyong'o's Sam, a New Yorker living in hospice care with what's implied to be some form of cancer. She, her service cat Frodo, and a number of other patients are on a day trip to Manhattan when suddenly the sky is full of falling asteroids and Death Angels start wreaking havoc. This is, as the title implies, the very start of the invasion we've become so familiar with over the past 6 years. While watching the first two films aren't required to understand Day 1, the movie does operate as though you've seen them, and thus already know why Sam is in the worst possible place for the invasion. It was one thing for the Abbotts to try and survive on a secluded farm in upstate New York, but having 8 million people in an enclosed space might as well be a giant welcome sign for the alien race that's laser focused on sound. It also doesn't waste time treading old ground. Sam figures out their sound gimmick pretty quickly, and nobody attempts to find their weakness like how the Abbotts eventually did. Within hours of the invasion, the military destroys all of the bridges surrounding the island and encourages all of the survivors to head south to board a handful of rescue ships. And if that sounds familiar, it's because that's the story Jaimin Hansu's character revealed to Cillian Murphy back in part 2. And while his brief presence in Day 1 might seem like a dead giveaway as to how this movie ends, they manage to keep you guessing. See, Sam knows she's on borrowed time because of her illness, so she's not interested in escaping. At first, it seems like her goal is something mundane as kind of a last hurrah at the end of the world, but we gradually discover it's something much more personal. It's during that journey where she runs into Eric, played by Joseph Quinn, who you either know as Eddie from Stranger Things or the next Human Torch. He's kind of got a lost puppy dog affect going on. There's not a particularly great reason why he starts following Sam, but she eventually agrees to let him tag along. And it's only once the pair are united that the movie shows its hand, taking a deeper emotional and psychological dive into its characters than what the first two films had time for. We see the weight of what it's like to have your life suddenly upended, regardless of if it's from a murderous horde of aliens or a terminal illness. And while it has plenty of nail-biting chase sequences, it's much more concerned with the human moments between the two leads. All of which hit home thanks to an outstanding performance from Nyong'o. And it would have been so easy for the movie to turn nihilistic as swarms of Death Angels gradually tear Manhattan to shreds. But it never loses that spark of optimism. We see the pair form a real friendship. Eric helps Sam reunite with parts of her life she thought she'd already lost, and she in turn agrees to help him try to find a way to safety. Oh, and to save Frodo, because this is a good movie with a very good kitty. As for the Death Angels, they're still nearly indestructible stabbing bastards. And while there are a few chase sequences and close encounters reminiscent of the other films, they find a way to shake things up again. The best of which is when the helicopters alerting citizens to head for safety keep inadvertently riling them up into an unstoppable rampaging horde. And while this is still a prequel, there are a couple of reveals regarding the aliens that might indicate how Part 3 plays out. A Quiet Place Day 1 is the kind of franchise spin-off I want to see from Hollywood. A thoughtful twist on the original premise, a well-told story, and some excellent emotional beats delivered by a world-class actor and a promising rising star. Go see it on the biggest screen you can. Thanks for watching.